the show, we talk about layoffs. Stacy sits down in the studio with Ronna Beal, where they discuss going through a layoff from three perspectives: the business, the family, and with yourself. This is The Career Cue, the podcast focused on helping you navigate the signals in your career to keep you growing and moving forward in business and in life. Here's today's host, Stacy Harris.
So welcome to the show, Ronna. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
You know, the reason why I reached out to see if you'd be interested in having this conversation, because I think it's a conversation that a lot of people don't really think of until it happens to them.
Amen.
And so today we're actually going to be talking about being laid off or made redundant, right? Mm-hmm. And the real side of that, you know, from a company standpoint, it's all about the bottom line, but we're talking about the human factor, right? And what does it mean to go through that experience, and how do you come out on the other side of that, you know, going through it and then getting your head around what the next steps are. So
navigating it when it hits you like a truck is a little bit difficult at times.
Yes. So obviously we want, you know, all of our listeners to never have to experience that. But the reality is that it's a possibility for anyone, right? Senior leadership gets made redundant. So let's just pull the Band-Aid off and jump right in. I want to talk about the conversations and approach it from three different perspectives. The one that happened at work, the one that happens at home, and then the one that happens with yourself, which we call in Australia having a bit of a chat with yourself.
Yeah. Myself and I have had a few chats in the past couple of weeks.
So let's start with work.
Okay.
Right? What does that conversation look like?
So having been in the workforce for 20 years, because I started very young, I have been through lots of corporate restructuring, but I was never personally affected. I watched coworkers get called to the room and always thought, honestly, there's a part of me that always thought, well, their job must not have had a huge impact, or, you know, they must not have been doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I never saw it from the pure fact that it's a bottom line driven thing. But the morning of the restructuring for us, when I got that invitation with my boss in a room that wasn't his office, I knew, right? And it was an hour and a half away from the time that I got the invitation. And I sat thinking, well, this is impossible. I'm irreplaceable. How could they possibly get rid of me? The conversation itself was very formal, very sterile. You know, there's a script for them. The HR guy's there. They do the business of it. And it was surreal. And it was emotional. You know, you work really hard. You try to have positive impact on people and business and all of that. But at the end of it, it's you that they're deciding to let go. And I never viewed it as so personal, obviously, until it was me.
Well, and especially to have to sit for an hour and a half knowing that it's coming, right? Like,
I drank quite a bit of coffee, called my husband to make sure that we had no pending transactions coming through the accounts, and spoke to some peers that were also obviously facing the same thing and just trying to support each other.
And I know you, right, both in a professional and a personal capacity. So it's no shock that you actually handled it with a professional attitude, right?
Thank you.
Right. And it's not shocking for me to know that. But given that it is, for the business, it's very factual. But for the individual, it is deeply personal, especially when you invest so much time and energy in building a business or whatever it is that you're doing in that job, or just the sheer time. So to walking into those conversations, it is surreal and it is emotional. So if possible, maintaining, because it doesn't mean that it's done forever. You may return to that organization.
It was not we're not happy with you. It was we've restructured and the roles are different and yours just isn't a part of the plan right now.
It's a business decision.
Right, which, you know, I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the credibility that I built with the team I worked for. And as much as there is that impulse inside of you to, you know, go across the table and tell them exactly what you think, you can't give up all of the credibility you've built or the hard work you've done to build a reputation of being someone that they want to be part of their team for that moment.
Right.
There was a Warren Buffett quote years ago. A friend told me that it takes 20 years to build your reputation and 1 second to ruin it.
To destroy it, yeah.
Something like that. And it was.
Yeah. You invested so much in your legacy, your professional legacy. You couldn't have it crumble.
Right. It's not worth it for one impulsive reaction.
Yeah.
So while the hour and a half was painful that I was waiting, it did allow me to prepare myself mentally to not go in emotions first.
Right.
And I think it's important. I think it's coming out of that room and seeing peers that realized that I had been affected or my role was gone. That was difficult because I wanted to be graceful in my exit. I didn't want to be a victim of what had happened. I didn't want any of them to go into a panic, whether they were affected or not.
Right.
As you said, I put a lot of time into the place that I was working, and I want it to do well because I put in so many years of blood, sweat, and tears. I don't want them to crumble and fail.
Right.
I want them to know that I was valuable and miss me a little bit. But for me, it was, okay, this is a bad thing, but it is just a job.
Yeah, and it's not over. Your career doesn't come to an end because a business decision was made about the head count that you were in.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the road, and I can't afford to retire, so we're going to keep going. We're going to keep moving forward.
Take a bit of a pit stop and then get back on. Yeah. So let's talk about the conversations when you got home. You are a wife. You're a mom. Your kids, most of your children are old enough to understand.
Yes, most of the brood.
So while you're having to kind of digest this information yourself and obviously having the conversation with your husband, then you're waiting for the kids to come home, and then you the varying ages, the life stages that they're in, right? Their ability to be able to kind of comprehend what was going on. So that would obviously present a little bit more of an emotional conversation.
Absolutely. So my children, as you know, we have a toddler. We have 9-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter, and a 16-year-old daughter. So I got everything going on. New drivers, potty training, all of it's happening at the same time. And my children are 4 very unique people. I don't know how they're so unique from each other, but they are. And Jim and I have been married for 18 years. And he's been laid off before. And so I've been on the other end of that conversation as the spouse that says, we'll figure it out. Maybe inside my head, there's a hot panic, but on the outside, it's we'll figure it out and we'll get through it. I never expected to be the one coming home and saying, what are we going to do? And, he really stepped up. He did. He said, great, what are the details? We went through the business of it because it's business. We talked about the severance or the package or all of those details. And then it was, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, well, right now I want to have a drink. But we didn't panic. Part of that is age, right? I think when you're 25 and you get laid off, you go to, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. What am I ever going to do? When you're not 25 anymore, it's just a different thing. You just know it's a stage of life. My father gave me an analogy once when I was young in my career and I was a workaholic. Shocking. That you're juggling balls. One of them's rubber and the rest are glass. So you can only drop the rubber ball. Glass are relationships, health, taking care of yourself, your family, and the rubber ball is your job. So if you drop it, it will hit the ground and bounce back. But if you drop the other ones, you can't just put them back together. And so I've always thought of it that way. Always, always. And that's what I told my kids. So my oldest, sweet girl, Alice is an old soul. And when I told her, she wanted to comfort me. I said, we're going to be fine. Mom's going to find whatever the next thing is. But I'll be around more. So that's a gift. And if you have questions, let me know. And don't panic. My oldest son, Grayson, who's 9, came home from school. And he said, why are you here? And so I sat him down and I said, well, they had changes at work today and Mommy doesn't have that job anymore. And he immediately started crying. And I panicked that I had put my stress on him. And I said, Grayson, why are you crying? We don't have to be afraid. There's nothing to worry about. And he said, I'm mad for you, Mom. I'm mad at them for you. And his protective instinct came out. And I said, it's okay. I'm going to have a better job and it'll be great. Shayna, my younger daughter, who's 11, is my mother's revenge on me and a professional consumer. And we all knew the reaction would be, oh my gosh, are we poor? We're poor. I can't have nice things. I'm never going to get anything I want to get. I reassured her that she is still poor because she has no money.
Right.
But the rest of us, we're going to be fine.
We're just fine.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're going to be good. And then, my toddler can't figure out really what's going on, but I intentionally didn't change his routine. He's going to daycare. He's, I don't want everyone's life to be in an uproar. And getting your next thing is a job. It takes time to do those things. And then conversations with myself, it takes a long time to convince yourself that it isn't you. That you didn't do something wrong. Right. Or where could you have improved things? I think hearing immediately from my network of colleagues from lots of places I've worked, and by immediately I mean within an hour, to a few days through email and text and phone calls. What can we do? Send me your resume. You're going to land somewhere great. I can't believe, their same disbelief. I can't believe you were affected. What are we going to do without you? Which is nice to hear in that scenario instead of, thank God she's gone. So that helps.
Yeah. And those are ongoing conversations with yourself, right? Because it depends on the day, depends on what's going on elsewhere in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that actually brings up my next question about your network. I personally know that you're incredibly well networked.
Thank you.
And that you do a really good job of keeping your network warm, what we talk about, because you don't want a cold network.
No one wants a cold network.
But you do a really good job of staying connected with your community, whether it be a professional or personal community. So you just mentioned that within a matter of hours and days, you had people reaching out to you because they'd heard the news, whether it was directly through you or someone else, right? So obviously not for the sole purpose of if you ever got laid off that your network would be ones to reach out to you. But you've placed an incredible amount of importance on making sure that your network is tended to, and is that not only that you have a support network, but that you're a part of a community of people that support each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think in all relationships, professional, personal, and the lines get really blurry when you've invested a lot of time somewhere. So, right, I've got you. You started professional, and you're both. Is to be genuine. Be genuinely there for people when they need them so that when it's your turn to need, they're there for you. Don't be self-serving. And it's a difficult thing at times for people in a professional world where you're supposed to climb that ladder. And sometimes you're, supposed to knock somebody else out of the way to climb the ladder. Treating people as the people that they are. Treating them with respect. Taking expecting positive from them and not seeing them as pawns in your game. When you are employed and you're working cross-functionally, it is about the relationships you build. It's not about your title. It's not about which group you're in. It's about how do you get things done by doing it together as a team. So once you're not in that professional sphere anymore, it's the same thing, right? It's losing a job is not the worst thing that has ever happened to me.
It pales in comparison to the other stuff.
Yeah. And they don't get to take my friends away.
Right.
They don't go, okay, as part of the deal, you can't ever contact anyone who works here again. Those people affected my life because of who they were.
Right.
Not the circumstances were professional.
Right.
But the relationships that we built were because we genuinely cared about one another.
Right.
And we did more than just talk about the checklist of what was going on that day.
Right.
So
you cared for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you envision your next professional step to be?
Barring a lot of winning, which could come anytime.
Right.
Anytime.
That should not be your plan A, by the way.
That's not plan A.
Okay.
But if it happens, that immediately moves to plan A.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's probably, I expected to be kind of anxious. And I'm not. And it's so relieving.
I love that.
I was speaking to a recruiter this morning on the phone, and she was saying, well, what are your plans? And and I have this role. And, her job is to sell me like, hey, here's the package. How can I make this sound wonderful to you? And I had a moment and I said, I am taking my time. The most important thing to me has always been the people that I work with and the relationships I build. So I'm going to be selective. And I'm going to make sure that I don't sacrifice all of those other things just to land that paycheck. And I get, right? Bills have to be paid.
Lights have to be kept on.
Lots of people have to take jobs they don't want to take. But for this moment in time, I have the opportunity to be more selective. And I'm doing it I met with a former colleague yesterday and went to her place of work and just kind of got a feel for what is this environment like versus what I've been in, and would I be interested in working here instead of immediately going to the job board and looking for something that matches my resume and throwing it over the fence. And
because it's more than the job description.
Right.
Yeah.
There are lots of intangibles that aren't bullets on that job description that you need to understand. And some things are worth less money. Right? So
I love that.
I've been at the end of the spectrum of very low wage and quite honestly then thinking I was rich because life was different, to making piles of money, but at the expense of other things. And I just, money comes and goes.
So it sounds like this is inadvertently giving you an opportunity to breathe.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Because if this hadn't have happened, the last few weeks would have been used to just doing what you needed to do in order to be able to deliver on the actions that were required as a part of your job.
Absolutely.
And this is allowing you to be able to kind of like, well, wait a second, no, what is it that Ronna needs, not what a job description or a company wants her to be.
What's going to be best for me.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is the folks that are still, that weren't affected, but they're affected from the sense that it was a restructuring and there's a giant organizational change and navigating change that others have decided for them versus me navigating, obviously my initial change was navigated by them, decided for me, but being able to say, what do I want to do long term? What's going to matter to me at the end of this life? And it certainly won't be what my title was at any one point. So,
and I think this is a fantastic conversation to have for the folks that are currently employed. Even if there's no risk of you being laid off because you happen to be working for a company that has promised somehow legally
writing
never lay anyone off or have to go through a restructuring. These are the conversations and these are the thoughts that you need to start having regardless of where you are, whether you're faced with a massive professional change or not. It's what is most important? What is it that I want? And, if we are put in a situation where the initial decision is taken away from us, we have thought about it enough to go, it's okay. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to decide when I step into that next or where I step, right? It may be that you have to step into something right away, but you have a clear understanding of the direction you want to head, or you're like, well, I have a little bit of time, but I know the direction that I want to go into, and I will absolutely make sure that it is exactly where I want to land. Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, any additional advice that you want to give to folks as we wrap up?
Yeah. So, if you need a crack gal for your team, just kidding. I would say, humbly, don't get overconfident. Because I did. I absolutely did. Because I knew what my impacts were to the team and to the business and to what was happening. I assumed that my boss could articulate that. If the question came up, hey, there's a restructuring and who do you need and what can be eliminated? Because they go back to job description, which most people realize 80% of that isn't what you end up focusing on and doing. It's that other duties as assigned. And I will hold myself accountable for not arming him with the right information for those conversations. So as self-serving as it sounds, you have to learn to toot your own horn with genuine. Like,
Right.
you have to earn the right to go and say, this is my impact. But to make sure that it's clear to them, you're doing more than the bullets in your deliverables or your review, right? You're doing
In
more
your
than
performance
checking
review.
those
Yep.
5 boxes. And so I would say that. And it can still happen to you. Even if your boss can be your champion, sometimes your boss is also
On the line.
on the line.
Yep.
Or champions in the organization who you think have told you in the past, you never have to worry about a job here. You will always work for me. When that person is also affected by the reorg, you're like, well, now what do I do? Great. Okay. So my safety net and it's packing with me, that's not a great thing. And to embrace change. It sounds
love that.
very cliche,
No,
right?
I love
And you
that.
hear it when you're young and you're like, blah, blah, blah. But you have to embrace it. It's going to happen.
Right.
Things never, ever, ever stay the same. And to see, okay, what is my opportunity to make this count?
Make it count. Oh,
So
I love that.
everyone goes through difficult things.
Yep.
There's not a human being that is on this earth that doesn't have challenges and professional, personal, all of those things. If you can approach it with the idea that going through whatever it is that I'm going through can count for something, then it's easier to make it through to the other side of that.
I know that you are making this one count.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you're just getting warmed up.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see this next part. And I am thankful that I can get a front row seat to what that's going to look like, because I don't need to be a 40-year-old cheerleader, but I am one of Ronna Beal's.
I'll bring pom-poms for you. So what colors do
I'm
you
not
want?
sure if anyone needs to see that, but
Well, it's a podcast, so
yeah, I'm a face of radio. Well, this has been great, Ronna. If the folks out there, whether you're faced with a restructuring or any changes in your professional life, or even if you believe that you have the golden ticket and somehow you'll never be impacted, you've heard it from someone that's lived it, both on all kinds of sides, right? You've been the spouse that's been the recipient of that information, and you've been the one that now has to deliver it. So take notes from Ronna, and like you said, make it count. I'm going to
Absolutely.
quote you on that.
There you
Okay. So before we wrap up, a couple of quick questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What was your first job, and what did you learn from it that you still use today?
my first job ever that I got a real paycheck for, where the government kept taxes, was at a pizza place. It's very, very glamorous work. And honestly, what I learned there was that you have to have the whole team for it to work, right? So you got the guy on the phone taking the order. You have the people who have to make the pizzas. If the guy on the phone puts the wrong information in the order, you're making the wrong pizza. And, if the delivery guy doesn't get it there on time, it doesn't matter. So it also taught me about the waves of business, ironically. So pizza restaurants get busy from 5 to 9 p.m. or on a Friday or a Saturday or during a big game, right? And then there are afternoons where you're like, would someone please order a pizza? So business comes in waves. And in the low periods, you got to regroup, right? You got to regroup, and then you're going to get hit by that next wave. So there you go.
I love that. Now, how old were you at the time?
I was the glamorous age of 16. I had a uniform and a name tag. Wore an apron,
Which made it
and
official.
a visor.
Ooh, now that's what makes it legit.
Yeah.
The visor.
The visor.
Yeah. Well, and so I always find, the answers to these questions so interesting. One, because they're never the same, but also that we are learning the ways of business and life at 16 when things really aren't the frontal lobe is not formed.
No.
And nor
None of the lobes.
You're a sponge, but things are leaking out. Like it doesn't really stick. But then you reflect on it, 20, 30 years later, and you're just
absolutely.
like, wait a second.
I was not that conscious of these brilliant life skills at 16. But looking back, I can apply the lesson.
Brilliant.
I know.
Brilliant. Yes.
I know most 16-year-olds immediately pick up on the deep meaning, but I was a little slow.
So if you're 16 and you're listening to this podcast, take note of what you're learning today because it will come and be definitely applicable later on.
Yes.
So what have you read, listened to, or watched recently that you'd recommend?
On a professional
anything.
Actually, I read Orphan Train recently. It's a semi-nonfiction historical novel about children that were displaced in Europe and having to get on this train to go and be delivered to their adoptive families. And these aren't like Donahue and Oprah Winfrey, hooray, I found these wonderful families. It's who could take in a child and just the struggle of the lack of control over their own destiny at such a young age and the fear of those characters and the resiliency. It was, it makes you regroup and think, okay, like no matter what is going on in my poor suburban me, United States, Seattle, Washington life.
You're not being put on a train.
Yeah. I have far more than I'm grateful for it, as grateful as I should be every day. So.
That sounds like a great read.
It is.
Okay. Did it make you cry?
I'll bring it to you. Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit.
Okay. I might not have to read that.
Not like the ugly cry, just like, that was cathartic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. There is actually one question that I didn't put in the email. You're sitting across from 90-year-old Ronna today. What does she say to you?
Holy. No, just kidding. I can't believe we made it to 90. I hope that she says, look how much good you did. Look at the people you helped. If I make it to 90, because, it's still a few years away, just a couple, I know that it will be an age where I am looking forward to what's next as well and to be reunited with the people that are there waiting for me.
Nice.
But, your legacy is what you do for people and how you connect with them.
And not the title that you have.
Not the title. Oh, no, not the title.
Yeah.
Because you can get anything put on a headstone. No one
questions it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we'll have you actually come back because there's some other stuff I want to talk to you about. But we've had a lot of conversations about end of life.
Yes, ma'am.
And hospice and the conversations that people have at that point. And I don't know, never say never, but I would imagine that there's very, very, very few people that talk about and focus on what they accomplished or what their title was. In actual fact,
absolutely.
They're talking about the glass balls. They're not talking about the rubber one that bounces back.
Yeah.
So this has been awesome.
You're the best.
Yeah, I could talk. Well, we do talk all the time. Maybe we should start
kind of
just recording
fancy
all of
to
this.
do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you again. I love this. Looking forward to hearing about the next steps and continuing to follow your journey.
Yes.
Thank you. So check us out at thecareerq.com. You'll be able to learn more about Ronna, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to head on over to thecareerq.com where you can get more information, show notes, and related articles to today's topic. Also, if you like what you're hearing, head on over to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a rating and review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again.
The Career Q podcast is produced by Lens Group Media and recorded at Jack Straw Cultural Center in the lovely Seattle, Washington.